Hey guys, Cosmic Sparrow here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you haven't already seen it, be sure to check out the previous video I made about Crow 64. It's very important if you don't know the timeline already, or if you're new to this whole thing. There's a few things I'd like to address before I begin though. The first being a trigger warning for anyone who is sensitive to suicide, terminal illness talk, or any sorts of harm. The second one is about the facts and information I will be talking about. Some facts may be added to this in the future due to new discoveries. Facts may be changed, added onto, or even voided because they won't be needed anymore. So without further ado, let's go deep into the iceberg, the non-existent iceberg, of Crow 64. So I would like to begin with bringing up some characters that are important to our series, and whose names will become important and reoccur throughout the series. The first, and obviously most important character, is Manfred Lorenz. So far, he is known as the creator of Catastrophe Crow, and father to Nils Lorenz, Thea Lorenz, and loving husband to Marta Lorenz. Some important notes about him are his initials are ML. He speaks of Marta, his wife, in the third person. He speaks to Nils as a family member. He is familiar with events surrounding Catastrophe Crow, and eventually he apologizes to a former Opus employee. Next, we have Marta Lorenz. We don't know much about her, just that she was Manfred's wife, and that she left the country about 6 months prior to his disappearance. She was also the addressee of his last letter. The next character, another important character, is Thea Lorenz, Manfred's daughter. She was the one who drew inspiration for Catastrophe Crow, and she is also presumed dead, though this is not confirmed yet. We will get into this more later on. The next character is his son, Nils Lorenz. Some emails collected from people in the Discord server suggest that Nils is alive and that Manfred is trying to reach out to him. His current whereabouts are unknown, however. He is also not mentioned whatsoever in What Happened to Crow 64 by Adam Butcher. Ulrich Adaman was a former programmer for Opus Industries. He possesses an old workstation of which he dumped a ROM. He also has given knowledge of certain things about the game to the Discord group. Next, we will go into the characters that appear in the game Crow 64. The first we will begin with is Brother Crow. So, Brother Crow is a separate entity from Mr. Crow, and it's possible that he may be the same character as Crawler and the Mirror Monster, however this is also not confirmed. The Brother Crow appears in the Let's Play Catastrophe Crow, Episode 1, in the forest level after Mr. Crow interacts with the mirror in the forest level. It is believed that he represents Nils, however this is also not confirmed. Unlike Mr. Crow, he is able to fly, with no apparent limit. He is shorter than Mr. Crow, paralleling how Nils was shorter than Thea. Father Crow's comments about how you always looked alike in Let's Play Catastrophe Crow Episode 1, if Thea is Mr. Crow, then it follows that Nils' representative looks like Thea's. Nils, in Crow language, which I will discuss later, decodes to Crow in plain text, or our language. And he is also found inside of the Unity Project game. The next character is Father Crow. He is a glasses-wearing older crow, and presumed to be the father of Mr. Crow. He does not have an official name. General consensus among researchers believes that he represents Manfred, however this is not confirmed. Briefly, you become this player at 11:26 in What Happened to Crow 64 at the end of the video, when Mr. Crow falls down the stairs. He also, warning, commits suicide earlier in the video. There is also some evidence supporting the Manfred is Father Crow theory. He jumps off a boat with computer equipment, which is what is considered Manfred's suicide in the real world. He is the only worker at the work building and is apparently a programmer. He is a father like Manfred. He fits in with the general consensus that Mr. Crow represents Manfred's child, and he wears glasses like Manfred. Lastly, we have the dead crow. What appears to be a heavily injured crow is found at the end of What Happened to Crow 64. This possibly represents Thea Lorenz and may be the same as Mr. Crow, since Dead Crow only appears when Father Crow is the played character. Notably, they appear in a room that has Thea's original drawing. Dead Crow is also the crow that appears most like a real-life crow, ignoring the missing head. Perhaps the person it represents had a head injury. Although, this is not confirmed that it is Thea or even Manfred. This concludes the section for important characters that I will talk about in the game. This is definitely where things are going to start taking a darker turn in our series. So I will begin discussing the parallels between the game and real-life events. In the real world, there was Manfred Lorenz and his wife, Marta, and their 2 children, Thea and Nils. Their father, obsessed with the game, often spent time at Opus Interactive trying to work on the game. It was meant to be a gift for his family. However, something may have mysteriously happened to Thea, his daughter, who he was making the game for, and she passed away. Although this is not confirmed, but is generally what people assume to have happened. Shortly after this, the game was delayed and ultimately never finished. This eventually led to his wife leaving the country 6 months before Manfred decides to take his boat out into the North Sea and jump off. Many people believe this is a suicide, but there are also many facts and evidence that point to this being inaccurate and that he may be still alive. However, we will definitely get into these later. In the game, as I mentioned before, there is the Father Crow, and there's a point in the game where you see him jump off a boat, similar to how Manfred had supposedly taken his own life. And then at the end of the game, we see the dead crow, as previously mentioned, and people think that this represents Thea. There are also parallels to what their house looked like in real life and in the game, as they look extremely similar. This is where the more complex things will start to play in our series. So, I'm sure that you've noticed there have been what seems like jumbled text and text bubbles throughout the game. Well, in the parts that I've shown anyway. Some of the researchers within this Discord server have figured out that it's a language, and it's called Crow language. Deciphering said language translates to different sentences. There is also another cipher called Vignere cipher. It uses mostly numbers instead of letters and isn't necessarily jumbled. Series of digits are used as values for the y-axis while repeating characters of a keyword, all of which so far being a person's name are used for the x-axis. Currently discovered functional keywords are Nils, Thea, and Crow. I would also like to mention a very important part of the Crow language specifically. In the Crow language, Thea translates to Crow, Crow translates to Nils, and Nils translates to Thea in this language. There are also ciphers within the audio tracks as well. People have put the soundtrack and different sound effects throughout the game through a spectrogram, and have come across encoded messages or images that will play an important part in this series, but more about that later on. Next, I would like to mention the teddy bear binary. There was a Unity dump from Ulrich, I believe, though I may be wrong about this. This video begins with Father Crow standing on the left side of the archway. Several seconds pass, and then the teddy bear appears, with the dialogue start sound playing. A static code is heard, which translates to 5x7 images of a pyramid and an ankh. Throughout the series, there is a lot of connection between Egyptian mythology and Crow 64, and this will come into play very, very soon. If you haven't caught on yet, there have been speculations that Manfred had left purposely clues all throughout the internet and the game in an attempt to reach Nils, his son. After we assumed that Thea died, we figured that maybe he was trying to reach out to Nils so he could have the game, Crow 64. The evidence for this is that 4 YouTube channels were found online, and each had uploaded videos of Catastrophe Crow gameplay. In each one were 4 different emails, except none of these emails existed, but upon piecing them together, it formed one massive email address. This email address did work, and did respond to messages for a while, but suddenly stopped not too long ago. For a while, people were attempting to impersonate each of the children, even his wife, some of the characters that appeared in the game, or were just blunt and rude trying to find answers. The email address that was found was also associated with the eBay account that Adam Butcher bought his Crow 64 copy from. This led us to believe that he was trying to reach out to Nils and was hoping that Nils would buy the said copy of Crow 64, but instead someone else bought it. We believe that he was trying to get it to Nils because Thea wasn't around, and Marta was most likely not around either, and he was trying to rely on Nils to get the said package. Because of the previously mentioned emails, this is where we begin to see the parallels between ancient Egypt and Crow 64. In some of the emails that Manfred sent, people were given codes, binary, that encoded to a picture of a pyramid. Another place we see this is in the Crow Helm. It appears and disappears many times throughout the videos and hasn't been explored in a normal state. Oftentimes, when people visit it and when it does appear, it looks very much like a pyramid. In the forest level, hieroglyphs may be found above a gate. One looks like a bull, an ankh, an eye, and a crow. They translate to May Ra Live. These represented hieroglyphs, and each one was named starting with a new totem. Because of these connections, people believed that there was a correlation between pyramids of ancient time and the pyramids and ancient Egyptian connections within the game. People believe that Manfred may have been trying to do something like preserve someone's memory or consciousness to keep them alive. Since there are these connections here, it is believed that in ancient Egypt, pharaohs used to be buried in pyramids so that they may live forever, and people started to correlate this with the game, that Manfred might have been trying to do something to get someone to live forever. However, this is most definitely not confirmed, and is just a theory for now, but one that seems very likely. In one of the videos, there is also weird audio that plays at one point, and when it was decoded, it turned out to be binary, and when it was decoded, it turned out to be an ankh. This is known as ankh binary. This is the end for this episode, but definitely be wary for the next episode, as we will be diving deeper into the non-existent iceberg. There will be more creepy and unsettling things, so please be cautious while you watch. Be sure to like and subscribe and to watch the previous video, and share these 2 videos if you haven't yet.